Hi guys, welcome to today's video, which is all about how you get to photograph in the Premier League. If you're new to football photography and want to shoot at the very elite level of English football in the Premier League through the EFL, you're going to have questions about how to get there. And while it's not a simple process and it's certainly not easy, there are a few different ways you can potentially get there. So in this video, I want to talk about accreditation. Accreditation for you to shoot in the Premier League, in the EFL, in the National League, and so on. And here's the caveat at this point. This is not an easy journey. There are a couple of ways you can achieve it potentially, but it's not easy, it's very competitive, and it's a lot of hard work. But if you've got your heart set on it, and you want to try and reach that top end of football photography in the UK, then this might be the video for you. The aim of this video is to hopefully help map out your journey from starting off in football photography or wherever you are now and getting up to those Premier League games. How you can get pitchside at the Premier League, and it's not a simple journey. It's going to take hard work, it's going to take time, it's going to take effort, and there are a ton of people out there who are in this field trying to do the same thing. So what I'm going to try and do in this video is give you those steps to take that put you in the best position, firstly, to apply for your accreditation, and then secondly, I'm going to actually touch on what you need to do to get accreditation in the Premier League, in the EFL, and in the National League. So step one is all about practice. I'm sorry if this is boring or a little bit predictable, but if you're new to football photography, you really need to practice. Get out there and just shoot matches. You can never have too much experience from shooting in different environments, from different weather and different matches, and telling a story from all these different matches as well. It will happen repeatedly. You get sent to a game and it's a boring 0-0 draw, and you've got to submit the photos that tell a story of that. It could be a wide angle of the stadium with the fans looking glum. It could be players holding their heads because they've missed a chance. It could be injuries. It could be teammates screaming at each other. It could be anything, but all of your learning for that, all your experience needs to come from you getting out and practicing in a park on a Saturday, on a Sunday at a grassroots level and just shooting. And I personally recommend you need a good year of that, 6 months minimum, at least a year out there, shoot as many games as you can. And I think before I actually shot a professional match for the first time, I think I'd probably, if you include tournaments over a couple of days, I had a load of games in, I probably shot in the region of 50 amateur matches. And here's some of my early horrendous photos. But I'd shot a load of grassroots football before I started. And then what I also did, which was actually a really great process for me, was I sent a lot of these photos to a couple of experienced photographers who I didn't know I'd found online. One of which is a great guy and I still talk to now. But I reached out and said, "Do us a favour, critique this. I think these are great. What do you think? Be honest." And the feedback was superb. And so many of the early bits of critique I got still form the basis for how I photograph football today. So practice, and get critiqued as often as you can. Step two, is also to build your portfolio. Whatever you try to do in future in terms of working as a freelancer, going to an agency, applying for accreditation, showing why you want it, you need a portfolio behind you to show that you're serious about this, that you're capable of taking a range of shots, that you're capable of capturing the emotion, the excitement of an occasion. You need a good portfolio that has got a good mix of shots. And within that, make sure you include shots from different types of venues. Again, even if it's grassroots, it could be a muddy school field, it could be a pristine park, it could be a cup final of a Sunday League team played in a slightly better little regional stadium. So loads of different venues, loads of different weather conditions, ages, etc. It's actually great to have a varying portfolio of different sports, but we're just talking about football here. So if that is your only sole aim is to shoot football, then you need to build a really strong football portfolio before you look to do anything else. Next up, I'm going to talk about what you need to do to shoot at higher levels of football within the English pyramid structure. Before we get into the English league structure that you can see in the pyramid on screen here, there are levels of the pyramid beneath this that are mostly amateur, some semi-pro as well. And it's a great kind of level to cut your teeth at in terms of photography. And there are teams right across England in just about every area that will be competing at these levels. Often these teams won't have a photographer and will be very grateful if you email ahead and say, you're looking to build a portfolio, get more practice, would you mind me coming to shoot games? They're probably going to say yes. They may say, give us some of your photos first. But it's absolutely key that you get that permission ahead of time, by the way, especially because that team may have players who are under the age of 18, so considered minors. Okay, let's move on to level 7 and 8 of the English football pyramid. And this consists of the Northern League, the Southern League, and the Isthmian League. Now there is a Premier level or Premier division of each of those at level 7. And then at level 8, you've got 6 divisions in total, where those divisions are split down basically into 2 again. So really starting to get quite regionalised here. Again, I could not find any up-to-date accreditation information, certainly for the Northern League or the Southern League. In terms of the Isthmian League, they did try something a bit crazy a few years ago where they wanted to charge photographers for accreditation, and then I think there was something about them holding a copyright as well. It's quite easy to find information about them withdrawing this policy a couple of days after launching it because it was absolutely crazy and they rightly reconsidered it. But I can't actually find information about what they ended up doing. So for these 3 divisions, I am going to leave a link in the description below. I'd recommend contacting the relevant media department of each division. And when I say media department, obviously be wise of the fact that these may not, in fact, are probably not professional people. And by that, I mean they're not full-time employed to work in media departments for these divisions like you get in the EFL, for instance. So drop them an email or find a contact page on the tournament, the division website, and drop an email into a general email address and just find out what the state of play is. What I imagine to be the case, certainly for the Northern and Southern divisions, is that you will need to just contact the club that you wish to shoot and get prior permission ahead of a game. And you're talking at very least 24 to 48 hours notice to those clubs, or to the home team that is, that you are coming. And please wait until they've replied rather than just turning up if you do not get a reply. Okay, now let's move on to 5 and 6, and this is the National League structure. And this is where we start to see some semi-pro teams come to the fore. And without disrespecting anyone below these steps, it's where football starts to get a little bit more serious actually, because there is that prize not too far away of getting into the much revered English Football League system. So the National League system consists of 6, which is 2 divisions. That is the National League North and the National League South. Above that, you've got the National League itself, and that is the first national division that you will come across, featuring teams from down south, up north, and everything in between. The National League is a superb level to shoot at. It's a little bit more professional in every sense of the word when you compare it to those levels further down the pyramid. And you will need to get accreditation from the league to shoot at any level of the National League structure, so either National League or the National League North and South. National League is great because the clubs who are relegated out of EFL League 2, they go into the National League. Those clubs that are kind of coming up and pushing for promotion, those ambitious clubs, of which there's been so many in the last 10 or 20 years, like Doncasters and Crawleys and Burton, who've come from lower reaches of English football and shot straight up through the National League or the conference, as it were, into the Football League. So there's a real mishmash. Right now, Notts County are in that league, Stockport County are in that league. Over the last 10 or 15 years, you've had really big clubs for non-league, like Oxford United, Tranmere Rovers, Cambridge United, Luton Town, clubs that shouldn't be at that level, all competing at that level. So you get a great mix of clubs, because there's also, in with those, some semi-amateur clubs, or semi-pro clubs, who are also mixing around. You might have some teams playing with a synthetic pitch. So this is a great level to get a really varied portfolio and experience, and just build up your knowledge of working at pitchside. Some will be in impressive stadiums, others much more kind of regional little village stadiums or grounds, but a great level to shoot at. Your requirements to get your accreditation at National League are fairly simple. Number 1, you're going to have to give them proof that you've got £2 million coverage as a minimum in public liability insurance. There are a ton of companies out there that specialise in sports photography or photographer public liability insurance. It's not very expensive. I think maybe public liability in my first year was maybe £50–60. It's maybe now about 80 now to get that 2 million coverage. It's not that expensive, and that's the first requirement for shooting in the National League structure. And the other requirement is basically a good reason to be covering it. So make sure you've got a portfolio online you can send them, and just give them a sentence or two explaining what you're going to do. Are you a freelancer? Is there a team you're specifically covering to supply a local newspaper? What is your reason for covering it? Are you a professional, semi-professional photographer? If that's the case, here's your portfolio. And that again is why the portfolio is so important, because you're not just there on a jolly. You can document and illustrate to the league, this is what I've done before and this is what I'm going to be doing with my accreditation. The accreditation is free other than that insurance cost that you sort yourself. And there is a form, I think it's a Word document that you fill out and can email back along with scans of your insurance certificates. Next up is the EFL, and this is steps 2 to 4 in the pyramid from the Championship down through League 1 and League 2. And this is a superb set of divisions to photograph in. The spectrum here in terms of what you've got at one end of the Championship compared to the other end of League 2 is massive. You've got your big clubs in the top end of the Championship, like your Sheffield Wednesdays, your Middlesbroughs, all those big old clubs who want to get back in the Premier League, right through down to your clubs who've maybe been semi-pro up until a couple of years ago, like Harrogate, for example, who are now in League 2 and got promoted a couple of years ago. So EFL is brilliant, but it's also where it starts to get a little bit tough to get your accreditation. The requirements to get your accreditation to shoot under your name in the EFL are as follows. Number 1, again, you need that £2 million minimum coverage on public liability insurance. And the other one is you must have had 15 football action photographs published in regional newspapers or equivalent in the last 12 months, and you must be able to evidence it along with the corresponding payment invoices for these photos. So what that essentially means is you have taken action photos of football and have been paid for those to appear in a local newspaper. It could be the Yorkshire Post, Liverpool Echo, even the Standard, whatever it is, those regional papers near to you. If you've been paid for that football action photo to appear in there within the last 12 months, that can be one of your 15, but you do need 15 to get your own EFL license. It's not easy because a lot of photographers who are new to it, to get their breaks and to get their credits and their bylines and their portfolios and their cuttings, what they will do is they'll give their photos away for free to local newspapers, because newspapers now have a great habit of saying, we've got no budget for that. Well, tough. If you're doing that, those photographs just will not qualify for your accreditation. So it's something to bear in mind now at the start of your journey, rather than further down the line when you realise you can't use the photos you thought you could. And so on to the Premier League and the holy grail of English football, considered the very elite level and widely revered as the top football division in the world. Photographing the Premier League is an interesting experience. It is highly competitive, it is flooded with agencies, and many agencies themselves get knockbacks. If you're a freelancer shooting under your own accreditation, it is incredibly difficult to get access to a lot of the big games. However, you can still get your accreditation in that first instance, but it's even harder than it is in the EFL. Here are the requirements to get your Premier League accreditation. Number 1, you're going to need that public liability insurance now to cover a minimum of £5 million. And number 2, you now need to have a minimum of 30 football action photographs published in national newspapers or equivalent in the last 12 months. Again, you're going to need to back this up and match these up with corresponding payment invoices. So we're talking about 30 photos in national newspapers. When we talk about equivalent in the national newspaper game, think about the big online websites as being equivalent. So Daily Mail online will probably be classed as an equivalent of a national newspaper in print. And this is a massive thing to bear in mind if you are following these steps, National League, EFL, etc. If you're sat next to another photographer, try and move, because if you think you're covering an EFL game, you're trying to get your 30 photos to the Premier League, a national newspaper is going to want something truly different to what everyone else is submitting. to go and buy from a freelancer. So if you're sat next to agency guys, you're going to get the same photos as them, and it's going to be too easy for the newspaper to use the feeds and the wires they've got in from those agencies and pick them off without even thinking. And many of them don't even think to see what the picture is or what the better picture is anyway, technically. So think different, try and be outside the box, move away from other photographers and get a photo that is very much your own and unique. Try and get those flash points. Know the story you're going to shoot would also be my advice. Know everything that can happen, know player records that might be broken that day for goals or appearances or a comeback from an injury, a last game in management, a first game in management. All those things are really important to help you get your photos standing alone and get ahead of some of those agencies where possible. But trust me, it is really difficult to do that and get those 30 national newspaper coverages. Thankfully, there are two other ways you could potentially get in to shoot at the EFL and the Premier League without getting your own accreditation. Number one is as a club photographer. So this would be an employee of a club or perhaps a contractor, freelancer on behalf of a club, and they will apply for accreditation on your behalf if you are shooting for them and supplying them with your photographs. The other way in, and probably the most widely used right now, is to join an agency. And there are a ton of agencies covering English football right now. From the very biggest, like Getty Images, for example, the name everyone knows, through to your smaller regional ones that might focus mainly on things such as the League One, League Two and the Championship, as well as cup games. And there's a limit of photographers allowed into every game. Now, some stadiums have permanent numbers, limits on numbers, others are specifically now due to COVID. But be aware of it. So even if you get into an agency, and again, you'll need a stellar portfolio, you'll need to be familiar with shooting and wiring images and editing images from pitchside, using something like Photo Mechanic. Check out the playlist on my channel if you want to get up to speed with using Photo Mechanic. It's an integral part of working for an agency. You're going to need to know all these things before you apply for an agency, and then different agencies have very different expectations. So some will literally tell you where you're going to be shooting, others will let you pick or certainly request where you'd like to shoot. One thing to know about shooting football, certainly for an agency, you could be sent wherever they want to be sent. You could be able to request games you want to see. But one thing is for sure, and you need to know this from the outset, it is not glamorous, right? If you're based up north, for example, you could be sent an hour or 2 hour drive to shoot Burnley or Morecambe or someone up that way, Preston, on a Tuesday night. And the game might be awful, it might be -2, it could be absolutely lashing down with rain. There's nothing glamorous about it, it's hard work, it's a lot of concentration, you're going to have a lot of good gear to shoot at that level for an agency, and you're going to have to know inside out, as I said, Photo Mechanic and how to use it, and have no excuses even when it's absolutely hammering down with rain or sleet or hail or windy. You'll need to get those photos off, which means getting your laptop out in the rain. Have you got protection for your laptop in different weathers? There's a bunch of considerations, but in short, probably the easiest way, if you can build a portfolio up and get experience of Photo Mechanic and have a knowledge of that, then probably the easiest way to get to the Premier League or the EFL right now, I think, is through an agency. But you will maybe even be shooting a lot on spec, so speculative, to see if you can get any sales. So you might even be traveling to games with no guarantee of earning money. So there we go, that's the end of the video. I hope you found it useful, just to give you a little bit of information about the accreditation requirements at each step and how you can make that journey from grassroots to the Premier League, theoretically, with a lot of hard work. If you liked the video, please give it a like down below and also subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you again on the next video.